There is a big damn difference between a thing that just exists on TV or in the newspaper and a thing that exists in your own neighborhood, on your street, in your front yard. And a lot of our friends on the left seem to be arriving at that realization all of a sudden. Earlier this week, there was a story out of Portland where there basically is no longer any part of that formerly fair city, including even the tonier residential districts, that is not fully infested with vagrants and drug addicts 24 hours a day. And your hearts go out to these people, the homeowners, I mean, not the hobos and the junkies, when you hear the amount of despair and helplessness in their voices. A woman fighting through tears as she says, "My family and I are prisoners in our own home. We can't go outside the house. The kids can't go play in the front yard because there's always some dude passed out with a needle in his arm 2 feet from our driveway." But you know what I'm guessing? I'm guessing most or all of those homeowners are lifelong loyal Democrat voters, and it probably never occurred to them for one moment that the woke policies they supported and the woke maniac candidates they voted for would one day send their chickens home to roost right in their neighborhood, right in front of their house, to the point where whatever quality of life they used to enjoy in their own domicile on their own estate has effectively become a thing of the past. So how do you feel about drug legalization now, Portlanders? How do you feel about all the mental asylums being shut down? How do you feel about defunding your police department to the point where they have to disband the homeless patrol? And are you still firm in your belief, now that your kids can't go play in the front yard, that people pursuing their every carnal pleasure and chemical delight is a good central principle around which to organize a society? And speaking of dumb leftists having sudden epiphanies about things, I need to take a moment here to do something that really gives me no pleasure at all. And that is talking about how absolutely right I was about something. You remember a couple months ago, when it was the day after Texas Governor Greg Abbott started putting Joe Biden's illegal aliens on buses and sending them to Washington, D.C.? Remember when nearly every commentator on the right said it was an empty publicity stunt and it wouldn't have any consequential effect on anything? And do you remember when I said, right here on this program, that I freaking love this idea? Remember when I said the best way to force action on the issue is to turn the nation's capital into a gigantic open-air illegal alien homeless camp? Well, guess what, boys and girls? Joe is going to finish the wall now. How about them Cowboys? You see, Mayor Bowser in D.C., she's not unlike that distraught homeowner in Portland. As long as this stuff was just on her TV, it was easy to call yourself a sanctuary city, promise all manner of free goodies to the world's huddled masses, and you'll notice there's always an inversely proportional relationship between how much the local leaders say they sparkly heart illegal aliens and how far away they are from the actual border, which is to say, you don't see too many sanctuary cities in New Mexico, southern Arizona, the Rio Grande Valley, but once you get to Northern California, once you get to the eastern seaboard, well, then it's like a bountiful cornucopia of wokeness. A woke horn of plenty, if you will, with these idiot big city Democrat mayors trying to outdo one another with the amount of largesse they can display toward people who have ingressed our territory in contravention of our laws. But then, Greg Abbott did a great thing. He said, "Okay, Mayor Bowser, okay, Mayor Adams up there in New York, I am going to dip into my own pocket to call your bluff. You love these people so much, you want to give them all this free stuff. I am giving you a chance to put your money where your mouth is." And it seems like Adams took it better than Bowser did. Adams, though he is a total maniac politically, he does seem to at least have the ground level understanding of reality that accompanies having been a street cop. So I do give him credit for not making a hypocrite of himself, because he's not complaining about the busloads of illegals that are being sent his way day after day. He came out and gave a speech in which he told the people of New York City, basically, we are going to have to deal with the consequences of being a sanctuary city. The schools are going to suffer, public services are going to suffer, your quality of life is going to suffer, but we will accept the consequences of the policies that we supported and implemented. But Bowser, meanwhile, well, let's just say she was not nearly as circumspect about the whole thing. And she's not nearly as concerned with avoiding the appearance of being a gigantic, grotesque hypocrite, as Eric Adams is, because she was basically like, nope. You gonna get me some National Guard? You gonna clear all these Latinkses out my city? I can't feed all these peoples. I don't even know what Latinkses like to eat. I know I said all that sanctuary shit before, but you know what? Fuck all y'all! From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where the Latinkses eat leg of mutton just like everybody else, but only after they dump a shitload of jalapenos and Cholula sauce on it. Buenos noches, señor y señora America, y todos los barcos en el mar, bienvenido al programa, soy su anfitrión, el pónimo y humilde servidor. And before we begin tonight's main segment in earnest, I've just received a very strongly worded email from our good friend White House Press Secretary Baghdad Buckwheat, in which she takes strong issue with my characterization of what they are actually doing with the border wall. Like she said to Peter Doocy of Fox News in today's comedy show, press briefing, while they are going to take the material that is already stocked on the site and use it to plug the gaps in the barrier that they intentionally failed to plug when the corpse of Joe Biden took office, it is not correct to refer to this operation as finishing the wall. Baghdad Buckwheat, or to use her Muslim name, Buckwheata al-Baghdadi, was very insistent that I relay to you, the audience, that what they are actually doing is cleaning up the mess that the previous administration left us, and that is a direct quote. And you have to admit, it was pretty rude of Trump to just leave all those construction materials laying around. Some of that stuff has sharp edges on it. Some poor migrant child might get a laceration and have to have stitches, and that scar will make her worth a hell of a lot less on the drug cartel sex slave market. The immorality of these Republicans is just off the charts sometimes, don't you think? So now, out of the goodness of his heart, to eliminate this heinous safety risk that was left behind by his predecessor, Donald Trump, Joe Biden is going to clean up these piles of discarded debris by fashioning it into something that looks like a wall and stands where there used to be no wall, but which is totally not a wall. So stop calling it a wall, you awful, disgusting racist. Oh, and the last thing in the email was that I should remind the audience that Ms. Buckwheat is the first gay, black, female, lesbian, immigrant woman of color in the history of White House press secretaries. The only problem now is that they're still calling it the White House, am I right? And as much as I dislike talking about Joe Biden all the time, we need to talk about Joe Biden. Specifically, Joe Biden's amphetamine dosage. Let's just come out and say it. I'm just saying, if the White House physician happens to be watching tonight, you might want to pump the brakes a little bit, because did you see the spot he did the other day, which was just, he came out to say, I got over the COVID, I'm standing in front of the camera to prove I'm still alive, so as a practical matter, this isn't all that much different from a terrorist hostage video, but just without some Haji sticking the barrel of an AK-47 in my ear. The thing was only about 40-odd seconds long, maybe, but there was one thing about it that a lot of people noticed, namely, the fact that he never blinked the entire time, and his eyes were so wide open, so locked in. He looked almost as silly as I did the first week I had the teleprompter. It's like the look a person gets when they realize, wow, did I just watch a video of the president's son putting Skittles on his genitals? And I don't know about you all, but I think it's a gross injustice that I have seen Hunter Biden's wedding tackle a sufficient number of times that I actually have lost count. Was it naive of me to assume I could live out my natural lifetime without ever seeing the private parts of any presidential offspring? Was that an unreasonable expectation? Should I just accept it and habituate myself to it and operate in the assumption that for all future Democrat presidents, I will have to watch sex videos of their kids? Is that just how the new and improved progressive future works, and I should stop being such a curmudgeon about it? But hey, I guess the Democrats have been telling us for 25 years now that we should stop being so hung up on matters of sex and the presidency, so I guess I'm just the one who's the old stick in the mud. No, Jim Eagle, that is not a monkeypox joke. That's terrible of you to imply that. The point being, when you're the guy regulating the president's chemical intake, and the guy comes out looking so wired it is impossible not to notice it, I don't know what kind of speed you are pumping him full of, but maybe just dial back the dosage a little bit, at least until he remembers to blink. But if anything, it seems like they upped the dosage because yesterday Angry Grandpa was back, baby. He was fighting mad, spraying spittle everywhere, waving his bony old finger in America's face, giving us the stern lecture we so badly need. Because we really are a bunch of ridiculous ingrates, you know. Angry Grandpa is mad as hell that anybody would complain about inflation after he, Angry Grandpa, personally sent us all a check for $8,000. Now, there are moments in life, ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when one is impelled to ask oneself, in perfect seriousness, does the President of the United States really not have any idea how economies work? Does he really not understand that the damn checks are what caused the damn inflation? Does he really not understand that you can't tackle inflation by just printing a whole bunch of fake money? And the idiot Treasury Secretary doesn't understand any of this either, and all the doofuses on the Council of Economic Advisors don't understand it. They all think we're going to end a recession by doubling down on the policies that caused the recession in the first place. But you know what, Mr. President? Since you brought up the stupid stimulus checks, since you've chosen to predicate your whole argument on the stupid stimulus checks, all right then, let's talk about the stupid stimulus checks. And let's begin with my own personal anecdote. Like many millions of other Americans, I had no want or need of any stimulus checks. I never missed a day of work over the China virus, and nor did Lady Curmudgeon. As a household, we would have much preferred being able to opt out of the stimulus payments so as to limit the amount of inflation that's being caused by paying people to stay home who are not even staying home. But since you guys insisted on shotgun blasting these stupid checks out to everybody, in many cases against their will, well, everybody has now been made to suffer for it, because now our money is worth a whole hell of a lot less. And our national economy stands on the brink of collapse. And would it really have been that inconvenient to just create some sort of opt-out for people who didn't want the checks? We can land 12 men on the surface of the moon. We can put a freaking go-kart on Mars, but we can't make a little box that people can tick to say, no thanks, don't send me the money? Now, I have remarked before on more than one occasion that if Joe Biden had entered office with the express intent of wrecking the national economy as hard as possible, as quickly as possible, he would have done all the exact same things he has done in real life. Seriously, what could you do to wreck an economy that this man has not done? When he entered office, we were the world's #1 exporter of energy, which means we not only were self-sufficient insofar as our own power needs, but we had enough left over to sell more of it than any other country. And putting a stop to that was Joe Biden's first order of business on his first day. He gets sworn in at 12 noon, and by 4 o'clock, he has ripped the beating heart out of the U.S. energy sector and returned us to being a country whose president has to go hand in hand to foreign dictators to beg them for oil. And what does he do when people start complaining about paying $5 or $6 a gallon for gas? Does he pull his head out of his ass and take the shackles off of domestic energy production? Of course he doesn't. Joe Biden's visionary solution, while we are actively engaged in his dumb proxy war with Russia, while China is threatening open war on our other flank, his solution is to deplete 46% of our strategic petroleum reserve in order to produce some nominal temporary reduction in retail price so that he can then pat himself on the back and take credit for it. And the implications of that, they are as obvious as they are disturbing. If something happened geopolitically where we had to get onto an immediate war footing and mobilize most or all of our forces, we would very quickly run out of gas. And you know what happens after that? Then the Department of Defense has to nationalize all of the privately held supply, which means all the gas stations get shut down overnight, which means good luck driving to work. That's effectively a total shutdown of the economy that would make COVID look like a 24-hour cold. It's not overstating the matter to say I lose sleep over how badly Joe Biden has left our ass hanging out strategically with his plundering of the strategic reserve. There's a reason it is called the strategic reserve, after all. It is for time of war. It's not just a spare supply you get to dip into each time you're desperate to save your cratering poll numbers. That is not how this works. Do you really want to be the American president who lost a war in the 21st century because the army ran out of gas? Wasn't it bad enough getting humiliated and fleeing in shame before a conquering army of 9th century goat herders who were armed with weapons their grandfathers took off a dead Russian in 1983? Also, I'm sure it's just an amazing coincidence that within exactly half a year of the end of the Afghanistan debacle, we had a brand new proxy war with Russia. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I might say the defense contractors were clamoring for a new war, and they damn well got one, to the tune of what, close to $100 billion so far? Courtesy of the U.S. taxpayer who is currently skipping meals so he can afford to put gas in his car? That is a great look, Joe. Just fantastic. Can't imagine why that approval rating looks so anemic, buddy. It is a real mystery. And I guess there's an uncomfortable question we need to ask here. Do you think Joe understands that pulling oil out of the strategic reserve in tanks in the ground isn't the same as drilling for oil? I'm just saying, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that his mental function is so childlike at this point, his brain reduced to a quivering hunk of Play-Doh, that he might think, well, it's in the ground, and we're taking it out of the ground, so it's the same as drilling, right? It seems like drilling to me. And last thing for tonight. When I see a man display true courage, I like to call attention to it, and so I want to give a shout out tonight to Indianapolis Colts general manager Chris Ballard, who found time during his press conference yesterday to express his despair that in the United States of America, an 18-year-old man can go into a store and purchase an AK-15 assault rifle. And I'm glad someone finally had the stones to come out and say it, frankly. And even better, doing it during a press conference about football. But that's not important now, because back on that fateful day in 1940 when the Germans invaded Alaska, my grandpa was standing there with only an AK-15 to protect himself. And if he were here today, he would be the first one to say that AK-15 is a weapon of war and has no business being owned by any private citizen. Because the framers of our Constitution never intended for people to be walking around with AK-15s, damn it. And on that sober note, we will close things out for this week. I think Chris Ballard has given us all a lot to think about over the weekend, so I encourage you to use the time wisely. I will see you Monday. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.